Thank the member for Wide Bay, and I call the member for Indi.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Tonight I'd like to add my voice in support of the government on these two pieces of important legislation. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge the many members of my electorate who have spent hours working with my office, communicating with my office and making sure that I could come to this place and represent their views. So I'd like to say to Peter Ling, to Simone and Scott Lewis, to Jess Hind, to Anthony Glass, to Jeff and Ann Pudames, to Matthew Walker, to Matthew and Nicole Batocchio, to Kelly Bolland, to Leonie Jackson, thank you, and to all the other people who have written to my office. But I'd particularly like to draw attention to a letter I've received from Kevin Kean, who's the Australian Livestock and Rural Transporters Association. Kevin caught up with me at the North East Victorian Livestock Exchange in North Barnawartha and chewed my ear. So, Kevin, I heard you. And as he said in his letter to me, as an owner-driver of over 35 years, I find this very difficult to believe that a union who champions for the little fella against big business could possibly put me out of work or cut my work so that I have to cut maintenance to survive. The clause that states that there is no partial loading and any part load will be taken as a full load will be of great disadvantage to the rural sector. If farmers have to pay for full load, no matter how many they have on board on the load, then they will use smaller trucks to do the job at a lower cost, but put more trucks on the road. So to Kevin, I'm really happy tonight to support the government on this particular bit of legislation. And the second letter I'd like to refer to is from Ken Beggs from Mansfield. He writes a very extensive letter, but in particular he puts the three options that he's been faced with: that he continues to operate profitably, as he's currently doing, yet be in breach of the RSRT legislation, or alternatively he could sell up. This would mean selling equipment below the payout figures owing on them, and other carriers not affected by this order will readily take over the job at the same rates that he's working for. Or his third option is to employ an unrelated driver to drive the truck. And he says, if I did this, I would be compliant. I would not come under the RSRT order. The driver would be paid the current rate I pay myself, which is above the safe rates, continue with the contracts he's committed to and still make a profit. However, he says, I personally would not have a job, therefore no wage to live on. He says option 3 sounds ludicrous. However, how can I can employ someone to drive my truck under the same conditions I currently operate on and be legal, yet if I drive the truck myself I'm in breach of the RSRT order and thus breaking the law. How can this be fair and just? And he calls me. He said, how can our democratic system allow such discrimination against a minor sector of a large industry? And I say to the people of Indi, to the fantastic trucking and small industry, the small businesses that go with it, to the men and the women who make our logistics service work, to those who pick up our agricultural goods and carry them, to those who pick up our manufacturing goods and carry them, to those who pick up our retail goods and carry them, right across North East Victoria and then across this great and marvellous country. I say that democracy is working. Your voices have been loudly and clearly heard in this place, and I'm really pleased to add mine to the government's support tonight with this legislation, and hope the Senate quickly deal with what needs to be happened in the other House. So, as I bring my comments to a close, I'd like to particularly thank the many people of North East Victoria who have worked so closely to bring about this really positive outcome. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.